Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel at War update. And as we're set to deliberate the latest developments throughout the region, with specific focus, of course, on Israel, nevertheless, there are plenty of developments in Syria, Iraq, Iran, Yemen, and beyond that. But before all that, let's first focus on how this war began. 426 days ago, on October 7th of last year, the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates in the Gaza Strip have launched a surprise onslaught on southern Israel, declaring war by perpetrating a massacre, murdering some 1,200 mostly civilians, wounding over 4,800 others, and kidnapping some 250 people, including elderly men, women, children, and infants. 100 of them remain in Hamas captivity to date. And on that, let's now turn to our TV7 editor-at-large, Mr. Amir Oren. Amir, a special operation by the IDF in close cooperation with the Israel Security Agency, or Shin Bet, have successfully retrieved the body of one of the hostages, providing some relief to the family, of course. Unfortunately, he's not among the living. Nevertheless, ongoing efforts are being made both on the diplomatic front, behind the scenes, track 2, and more. What can you tell us about all of that?
So the victim was Itai Svirsky, who was kidnapped on October the 7th. He was held captive for several months before he was executed by his captors. There was intelligence information regarding his demise, but the body itself was only recovered yesterday. It was given a forensic examination, and it was established that indeed this was Mr. Svirsky. And as you say, now there are precisely 100 hostages, a few dozen of whom are alive. The rest, probably more than half of them, are already dead. Now, the Biden administration, of course, is about to leave office in about 45 or 50 days.
51 days.
They are making a last-minute effort. Secretary of State Biden was in Malta today, and in the margins of an international conference, he met with Foreign Minister Gideon Saar in order again to survey the possibilities of a hostage deal. There is some optimism pronounced by both officials and some of the journalists who have been briefed on the various efforts, but it is up to Hamas to give a definitive answer to the various approaches made by the mediators. A new mediator seems to be the Turkish President Erdogan, but there are also the Qataris and the Egyptians. All the while, the IDF is still in firefights in various places in Gaza, and in the Lebanese front, it is methodically screening the territory adjacent to the border, and is still finding some new underground facilities and firing positions aimed at the Israeli kibbutzim and other communities. While the ceasefire is basically being kept, Israel is still trying to hold off all the Iranian efforts to supply Hezbollah with munitions. It is hitting targets in Syria or along the Syrian-Lebanese border, and the stability has not been achieved yet because the mechanism supposedly set up by the United States and France does not seem to operate very smoothly.
Indeed.
Already.
Thank you, Mr. Olin. I'd like to initially focus, though, on the Gaza file. We will transit to the Lebanese front momentarily, but for that, I'd like to invite to the discussion Brigadier General in Reserve Dr. Amnon Sofrin, formerly the head of the intelligence division at Mossad, as well as a senior IDF intelligence directorate officer. Uh, it's good to see you as usual, General. I'd like to immediately ask you about Gidon Saar's remarks. He said as follows: I was pleased to meet with U.S. Secretary of State Secretary Blinken. I thanked Secretary Blinken for the American support throughout the war. I expressed to the Secretary that Israel sees an opportunity to advance a deal to release the hostages and is serious in its intent to reach such a deal. We hear of a ISA delegation set to travel to Egypt to deliberate with their Egyptian counterparts various frameworks, the outlines for such potential deal. Why the ISA and not Mossad, which has spearheading the talks for much of the past year? That's one question. And secondly, we now also hear that Qatar is reintroducing itself as yet again one of the key mediators, taking the lead at the expense, of course, of Turkey and the Egyptians.
Let us begin with the Egyptians. Just a few years ago, a delegation of Hamas leaders headed by Khalil Lahia, who was the deputy of Sinwar and is now one of the candidates to be the head of the what we call the political wing of Hamas, visited Egypt and had discussions with the Minister of Intelligence. And the idea is that they try to broker some agreements or some equation that will enable in the end to bring some kind of control on Gaza together with or combined of Hamas and Fatah, and even agreed to give Fatah the control on Rafah passage. And I think that the discussion right now of the ISA is not focused on releasing hostages or releasing people abducted to Gaza and held there, but regarding these discussions that they had with the Hamas delegation, and to see the follow-up and to see whether we have some kind of a breach that can enable us in the end to get to some equation that will enable in the end to get to another control in Gaza. This is what the Israeli government, of course, wishes. It doesn't want, of course, the Palestinians to rule Gaza, but some combination may be offered and may be accepted even on some terms. That's first thing. The second issue is regarding the people abducted and held in Gaza, that we have discussions regarding that, but there's no breakthrough yet. And of course, the Qataris doesn't want only Egyptians to deal with that and to get all the, to get all the coupons by them, and they want to be back on the first stage, on the main stage, and of course the Turkish as well. So everybody wants to be part of that, and everybody wants to be part of the success, and to prove to the world, especially to the Americans, that they can deliver some agreement that will, in the end, will bring back at least part of the hostages right now. And we don't speak about the others because the others is dependent on the consistent demand that Israel will leave Gaza Strip totally and leave it to the control of the Palestinians, no matter, they don't claim only Hamas, but they say some mutual control upon Gaza Strip.
Indeed. Well, let's turn elsewhere here in Jerusalem, where we're joined by Mr. Ori Saschar, the head of the research department at the IDSF, or Habitchonistim. It's good to see you all. I'd like to hear your take on the Gaza theater. What is the current state of play from an operational perspective? Obviously, the IDF is establishing additional control while also targeting a group of Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad leaders in the Han Yunis area. To what degree is this being effective, and does the pressure on Hamas indeed mount as time progresses?
Yeah, so Israel is attempting to pave the path to the interim phase. which is to move beyond the current phase of infighting into the interim phase until such time when a final settlement will be reached. And this interim phase, Israel has avoided for too many months, in my view. I'm assuming that this transition period between U.S. presidents could usher in some degree of leverage, because up until now, the Biden administration has had one vision in mind, the two-state solution, to which Israel could not agree. That the incoming Trump administration, in my view, was more inclined to be open to new ideas. But it was also the Israeli cabinet and security and defense establishment who did not want to engage in moving on to the next phase, which is humanitarian bubbles, as we call them. That is our proposal, to move into humanitarian zones, to neutralize Hamas's leverage and UNRWA's leverage over Gazan population by means of food distribution, humanitarian aid distribution. Now, I think Israel would be smart to choose a tactic of low-hanging fruits with hostage deal. We know that Hamas is not interested in a deal. Israel reportedly has attempted to at least reach some sort of consent with Hamas leaders on a handful of hostages in exchange for a handful of prisoners and some degree of pause in the fighting. And Hamas won't agree to that. But now, as the only serious figure of Hamas in the Gaza Strip is Mohammed Sinwar, infamous Yahya Sinwar's brother, and you got several other senior officials in Doha, I don't see a situation where Hamas agrees to release them. There are several other brigade commanders, but I don't see a situation where Hamas agrees, because so long as humanitarian aid flows into Gaza, there's no sufficient degree of leverage. We saw how Sinwar said in his letters that civilian casualties in Gaza are a necessary sacrifice, and they're ready to be fighting for years now. So, so long as Israel is not interested in leaving the hostages there for years, God forbid, yeah, the correct strategy would be more military pressure on Hamas, control over humanitarian supply, and reassessing Doha's role in all that. We know Qatar is not necessarily interested in reaching that very desirable deal.
Indeed. Well, Mr. Oren, I've been speaking with a couple of Lebanese individuals in recent days trying to figure out a report about a law that was initially passed by Parliament in Beirut regarding the so-called Hezbollah martyrs, the ones who've been killed in the operation in 2006, and now Hezbollah is opting to request the Lebanese government to recognize the Hezbollah terror operatives who were killed in this past year as part of the LAF, something that amounts up to 80 million euros in their request. And it seems like Nabih Berri is pushing for that to be accepted, something that would raise questions, of course, as to what is the difference between the LAF, which is obviously sponsored by the West, to Hezbollah, which is sponsored by Iran, and where is the red line between the two?
Yes, you're right. Maybe it's just the financial question, because the families of those Hezbollah terrorists who were killed in action, of course, they were not soldiers, but their families demand to be taken care of. And Hezbollah, as we remember, is first and foremost a welfare, charity, education organization. And if it cannot take care of its own, it will lose face among the general population. So maybe semantically, there can be found some solution. They can be recognized as similar to LAF servicemen, but obviously, if they are getting the same recognition, it means that their old claim that Hezbollah is the protector of Lebanon and that it is a legitimate armed group, what will that do to Security Council Resolution 1559 or even earlier, 425, it's going to be a mess. Let me just make a remark regarding your earlier question about why does Shabak or the ISA lead the delegation to Cairo. As you know, there is a division of labor between the military, including military intelligence, Mossad, and Shabak. Mossad is in charge of the relationship with various nations and their intelligence organizations. The military, of course, would have the best professional judgment regarding the disposition of forces in and around Gaza. But Shabak has the precedence in deciding who among the Palestinian prisoners that Hamas is asking for release can be released, and whom Israel should demand under no circumstances would be released. So if the bargaining is now centering on this particular point, which is very delicate domestically, politically in Israel, because two parties are dead set against the release of these hostages, then it would make sense for Shabak to lead the delegation during this round.
Indeed. Well, with regard to the recognition and acceptance of any terms between Hezbollah and the Lebanese armed forces through the Lebanese parliament would put them in loggerheads with a number of sanctions and the fact that Hezbollah is a designated foreign terrorist organization. And I do take offense when 80 million euros that are brought by the European Union or by the United States are transferred to such a terrorist organization. There is an issue with that, and those families need to think twice before sending their sons to get killed at the behest of the Islamic Republic of Iran. But let's move, General Sofrin, to the various activities that Israel has been undergoing in Syria specifically. We are seeing a robust effort to thwart or prevent the transfer of munitions to the Lebanese group Hezbollah. To what degree is it effective? And particularly now, when we're seeing the flooding of weaponry from Iraq, from Iran into Syria to try and support the Assad regime, push back against the onslaught of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, as well as the Free Syrian Army, both of which are backed by Turkey.
Israel has bombarded all the passages of between all the border between Lebanon and Syria, all the known ones, trying to block the flow of ammunition weapon systems coming out from Syria to Lebanon. Let's say. Second, they maintain this activity, ongoing maintenance, meaning every day, every now and then, when they try to repair it, they go and attack one more time and time and again, in order to destroy that and not to enable any transfer of weapon system coming out from Syria into Lebanon. That's phase A. Second, if you look at what happens now in the northern part of Syria, the rebels are moving southwards, and they captured most of the city of Hama, which is a very big city, which is south of Aleppo. And they keep on moving, and the Syrian armed forces now retreated and went out of this city of Hama, and is now being under the control of the rebels, and they still have the incentive to go on and to approach Damascus as well, as best as we can. Now, when they captured Aleppo, within the area of Aleppo, there are depots of what we call Source Institute, which is what we call some kind of military industrial of the Syrian armed forces for non-conventional weapons. And Israel was concerned of the fact that they will get hold on that, and this will be turned against Israel. And therefore, yesterday, our Air Force bombarded some of these facilities in order to deny them the ability to get out weapon systems and to use them, and to be able, of course, to risk Israel from that side. And we still maintain the ability or the activity to try to block any attempt to get through from from Syria into Lebanon. And you saw just yesterday or the day before, a senior Hezbollah liaison officer who was attached to the Syrian armed forces and responsible for transferring weapon systems from Syria to Lebanon was killed by an aerial attack of the IDF. And therefore, we maintain all this activity, ongoing maintenance, in order not to enable them to get more weapon systems coming out from Iran via Syria.
Indeed. Well, just to clear up the air, I've received many questions from viewers about some sort of request by the Assad regime to from Israel to help it in pushing back against Hayat Tahrir and al-Sham, and so it's delusional, obviously. The Assad regime is blaming Israel for supposedly being behind this attack alongside Turkey and even Ukraine, which obviously Israel has nothing to do with. Nonetheless, a power vacuum emerged following Israel's successful offensive against Hezbollah, as well as other operational activities that were directed at the Iranians, and Turkey is taking or exploiting this situation to its own advantage, since vacuum is always filled in the Middle East everywhere that it emerges. Mr. Issachar, I'd like to hear your take on that, but also we don't have very much time left. The Iraqi Prime Minister, Mohammed Shia al-Sudani, came out and declared that he will support deploying the Iraqi army in Syria in support of Bashar al-Assad. What are we to take of that?
Look, it's simple. I think Iran is now paying the price for its regional aggression strategy. Everywhere Iran touched has become a country in decline. We saw how in Syria, rebels from opposition groups funded by Turkey's Erdogan have literally, as you said, taken control of Haleb, second largest cities, going south to Hama and Homs, the three H's, I would say. And now Iran is scrambling to find a response. So it initially launched Hezbollah against Israel with almost 20,000 rockets and plans to invade the Galilee. Hezbollah was very well rehearsed in Syria, but now it has practically no forces to send to help out Bashar al-Assad. And now it's scrambling to understand whether or not Iranian militias in Iraq should be sent to Syria. We have reportedly some 200 militia members from Iraq who are on their way. And if the Iraqi army would like to intervene, it's probably a game changer, but I don't see that happening so easily. We do know that Iraq is literally, has fallen into Iran's lap following everything that happened in Iraq and Iran's strategy of instigating failed states. So this is Iran's strategy is actually turned on its head, and now the fire is redirected at Tehran. Now that Hamas and Hezbollah are practically decimated and Iranian air defense are much weaker than they used to be following Israel's attacks. And so the region is now in turmoil because of Iran's activity. No other party initiated war. The main destabilizing factor in the region is Iran. And so if we're looking for peace and stability, I would say neutralize the main tap, as we say, which is causing all the puddles around the floor. And really, this is the answer to all the turmoil and all the trouble we see in the Middle East today.
Indeed. Well, the last I heard, at least from people in the know, roughly 33,000 Iraqi Hashd al-Shaabi proxies or proxy militias are on the borderline preparing to flood into Iraq, and a couple of those militias entered into areas not far from the HSS or MSS, base of the Americans, which caused the Americans to be put in harm's way, at least defensively. They fell that way. So Central Command, under Operation Inherent Resolve, has launched repeated strikes against all kind of Shiite militias that are getting too near to their positions, starting on November 29th, November 2nd, November 3rd, including yesterday, with the destruction of multiple rocket launchers, with multiple tanks and militiamen also being killed. And the United States says we are doing this in a defensive posture. It has nothing to do with the northwestern area. Nonetheless, Iran is on note with regard to this, that it may not get into the crosshairs. And if need be, of course, additional U.S. allies in the region may opt in to assist the United States in defending its forces. But we're drawing near to the end of the program. One sentence from each. Mr. Oren, we'll start with you.
Yes, the Israeli Defense Forces, as every military force does, is in an everlasting cycle of reconstituting, training, fighting, and then reconstituting, etc., etc. And this is the time of year, one of several times, where a new cohort of conscripts is joining the IDF, already having embedded the lessons of this particular year, this war, and the IDF, if it has to rejoin the fight, will do it with an added strength.
Very good. Well, let's keep our sentences somewhat shorter. General Sofrin?
I think we have to focus on what happens in Syria and to watch carefully whether they are going down to Damascus and maybe begin to endangering Israel.
Mr. Yisachar?
It would be wise not to be distracted by Syria. It is a major event, but ultimately the big event is Iran and its nuclear program, funding terrorism around the region and instigating wars. I think this will be our main challenge going forward.
Mr. Yisachar, Brigadier General Dr. Amnon Sofrin, Mr. Amir Oren, thank you so very much for all of your insights. I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next update from here in Jerusalem, wishing you a good day.
Shalom, I'm Danny Ayalon, former Israeli ambassador to the United States, former deputy foreign minister and member of Knesset. Today, I'm very privileged to be hosting TV7's Middle East Review and also being a panelist of the various shows of TV7, which I find the most enlightening, most educating if you really want to understand the world, the global scene as well as the regional scene of the Middle East. It is worthwhile to watch TV7.
For more of TV7's productions and editorials, we invite you to visit our website at TV7israelnews.com.